Coming at you from Scratch Wolf Studio. It's that time again to rage across the internet. Your very favorite Werewolf the Apocalypse podcast. And we're coming at you with a very special episode today. Now, as usual, I'm Porter. My co-host Danny Tyson to my left.
Hey, everybody.
And remote again, we have once again our buddy C. Grant Rose.
Hey.
And our dear friend Melissa.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back, both of you.
And great to have you here.
Thank you.
Happy to be back.
We are
That's 6 now.
Oh.
Do you hear that, lyrics?
Oh, them's fighting words now.
Man's in the lead. He can...
Yes.
Got to catch him to fight him.
Just saying.
But we are virtually packed in here for a very special episode. We talked about it last week, very briefly.
Very, very briefly.
Right. But, a couple weeks ago, by the time this airs, there was the announcement from Justin Achille regarding Werewolf 5. And we felt that it would be a good idea to get a round table together and have a bit of a discussion.
Yeah. Yes. We've mentioned it already several times that we have a schedule. We know we need to keep to that schedule, but we also kind of planned on this. And if it were to happen, we knew we had to squeeze it in there somehow.
Right. So we called an audible, and here we are. Real quick before we get started, we want to thank you all for listening. And of course, if you feel the need, the kindness in your heart to support us, you can at our Patreon. There's some great rewards there. We talk about them almost every week. We won't today.
I think it's enough.
Yeah. Obviously, we got our website and the store there for some cool shit. If you can't support that way, spread the word, spread the love, and thank you for your continued support. We can't do it without you.
Shares, the likes,
everything
spread the knowledge. Helps. Yep.
All right, so without further ado, though...
We'll make that real quick.
Yeah, we'll make that quick today. We're going to hand this off to Mr. Tyson. Danny's going to MC this bad boy.
I'll MC this a little bit.
Right. Before we do start, though, actually, I should say we have a little structure today to make sure everyone's on the same page.
What? We don't fucking structure shit here.
With all these voices, we want to make sure. Danny is going to ask a question presented to us, and we're going to answer in alphabetical order, so it's going to be Grant, Melissa, and then myself. And
then we'll give ample time after each answer for counterpoints, or no, I take it back. Ample time after all three answers for any counterpoints.
Sound good, everybody?
Works for me.
That sounds polite. Are you sure you're not Canadian?
I'm sorry, what?
My God, here we go.
Well done. So now, without further ado, Mr. Daniel Tyson.
Okay, well, obviously, lots of things were said in this interview. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try and keep with what he said as close as possible. So we actually have direct quotes from Justin Achille himself. So, as far as questions go, let's start off with what we do know. 11 playable tribes, which just tells us there are still 13 tribes in the nation. But, now again, he did say 2 others still exist. And again, I'll use his words. All 13 tribes do exist in the world. One of the tribes probably doesn't have that positive an outlook that they don't necessarily have their bright a future. And unfortunately, that is direct quote. He might have been a little scrambled there for an answer, but again, direct quote. There is another tribe which is arguably perhaps fallen to the worm. Moreover, I think they express a new concept we are bringing in, which is called the Hoglask, which is kind of the counterpoint to Hirano. This one tribe that has fallen to that is a primary example of the Hoglask. So again, direct quotes. Now, again, in alphabetical order, Grant, what does that mean to you?
So it's complicated. So if you're going to look at it from how werewolf has been for the past 20 years, 30 years, adding an additional emotional state that causes some type of second and third order impacts of the Thera is not new. You had the Ratkin, and then you had like what they call the Apure, which was where they were so enamored with the wild, they kind of went into like this wild rage. And so I think that's a natural progression of that. It's a state of being for Guru that have lost the sensibilities to be able to really see the forest for the trees. They're just blind rage at this point, like Berserker Rage. That's pretty much what it is Berserker Rage versus Hirano, which is, just extreme paralyzing depression. So I think it could be good to add that into the game, especially for innovative storytellers to really start to incorporate those types of concepts. At the same time, I think that it would be a little easy for them to use this concept to sort of write out one of the tribes of playability, which I think is really what they're going with, in my humble prediction.
All right, Melissa, same question.
Okay, for me, it seems like it's a sort of like a bloodlust, as Grant sort of pointed out. There is mechanics within the system for when you hit that pressure point where your rage just completely takes over in terms of a frenzy, and you can fall to the worm that way. So I think that this is a concept that's not really new, but it's certainly something that is going to become more prevalent in this new system, and I'm not surprised to see it.
All right, fair point. Porter?
I think the first thing there is that you got to remember is that the Hirano was a deep depression. It was something that people fall to Hirano. And certainly, like Melissa points out, there's the Thrall the Worm frenzies. And of course, you want to go to the anger to the opposite spectrum of Hirano. But I think this too will be something more like an affliction. And I don't know that I see it being akin to a frenzy or a closer to frenzied state on the regular, because I feel like that's at that point ultimately untenable. In terms of, if you look at the nation as a whole, to have a tribe just on the bleeding edge of Berserker Fury at all time, that becomes a serious problem in terms of the Veil. And I don't see how they don't take care of that. And perhaps that's a direction they're going with this new game. I think it's going to be more like closer to an illness that has wrecked this tribe.
Okay. Now, before we hit any counterpoints, Grant, you have any speculation on which of those two tribes are no longer playable?
I mean, we've got a lot of back and forth about it. You have the Red Talons, who would be sort of easy to kind of write out in that way. Either, they've fallen so much to the wild, into the concept of basically a new Impersium, that they just kind of go crazy. So I think that's, in the front. But you also have the Get of Fenris. I think the Get it'd be easy to use that new emotional state to explain why they're no longer in the Guru Nation. As in, the majority of the tribe, especially the elders of the tribe, fall to this state, and therefore they go kind of crazy, and they get pushed out because they can no longer work with them. They can use the Berserker Rage as a precedent from back in the day, and how the Nordic culture has an impact on the Get of Fenris. And then if you're looking at it from a real-life perspective, the Get has proposed a lot of difficulties for White Wolf to the non-players that don't really understand the Get, or they're looking at it from like first edition Werewolf instead of current 20th edition or upcoming 5th edition, where they've actually deepened the lore to such an extent that a lot of those stereotypes and tropes from first edition are no longer valid, i.e. the camp in the Get of Fenris tribe book first edition, or the first one's not really first edition, or second edition, regardless, where they were all Nazis and white supremacists. They backpedaled on that, obviously, and they actually wrote them, that aspect of the Get of Fenris, into being obliterated, or at least marginalized within the tribe. So while if you're looking at it from, all my players that want to play Get are this type of stereotype or that type of stereotype, well, that's a problem at your particular table that you need to be able to get a hold of as a storyteller, versus problems with the lore. But that's me going off on a tangent. The biggest thing is they're going to be able to use that to either modify or write out some of these problematic tribes that aren't really in line with their view of how the World of Darkness is going to be in 5th edition.
So you're saying your two guesses are the Red Talons and the Get of Fenris?
At the forefront, yeah. I mean, okay. I have arguments for others as well, but I think those two are the two that are going to be most inclined to go ahead and make them unplayable.
Okay. Melissa, what do you think?
I agree with the Red Talons. They seemed like the one tribe that seems really out there in terms of all the other tribes. They're also the hardest to play for any type of player, veteran or new, because the concept of a wolf is just it's not something we sort of can understand at a player table. I will really be pissed if they choose to get a Fenris. Really. Because I do like to get a Fenris. But I think the other option is the Stargazers. They kind of wrote them out as they had left the tribe in some of the revised editions. For Werewolf 20, they kind of put them back, and they're on the cusp of leaving yet again. So I think they could easily take the Stargazers out. And then, less likely, but the Children of Gaia. And the reason why I chose the Children of Gaia is because the Children of Gaia, their Camp Imminent Strike has become far more militia and far more violent than it has been in previous editions. And the Children of Gaia might just be so fed up with everybody squabbling and fighting and, whatever, that they'll just say, you know what, screw it, we out.
Interesting choice. I didn't see that one coming. I like it, though.
Yeah.
What do you got, Porter?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I think the Stargazers being the ones to leave the nation to find, being fed up with the Gaur nation. I mean, that it was done and revised. And that's the thing is you got to keep in mind, I know that we've had Werewolf 20, but Werewolf 20 used the second edition canon. And
correct.
Werewolf 5 doesn't. And we know that because Vampire 5 doesn't. Because we have records of Anthelios being mentioned in Vampire 5. Therefore, it's the revised canon. So the Stargazers, they could easily retcon it so the Stargazers didn't leave yet, but now they did. Or the Stargazers could have already left, and that makes a math problem at that point. But that opens the door for something like Melissa said, to where perhaps a large chunk of the Children of Gaia leave, and what's left call themselves something else, to play with that numbers game and to give players something, quote, new. I think that's a possibility. I think they're just going to retcon the Stargazers. But it's a possibility.
So you want that to happen, but you think
I don't say want. I don't say want. I think it's a possibility.
Okay.
What I want is not what we're talking about right now.
Okay, good point, yeah.
The other tribe I think it's the Get Fenris. I think enough people who don't understand Werewolf and didn't play Werewolf misunderstand the Get Fenris. We see a lot of they're all Nazis out there in social media from people who have never read the tribe book. And I think Werewolf is going to go, or Paradox rather, they're going to go, well, it's easier just to get rid of them and make them antagonists than get people to learn better.
That's unfortunate.
But I agree.
Because, we don't want to lose. There's a large chunk of people, it's their favorite tribe.
Exactly. It's a great tribe.
All right. Then, Grant, any counterpoints to anything Porter or Melissa said?
I mean, I can see all of those things. I don't know if they're going to go off revised edition, like Porter was saying. I think that using the fact that they mentioned the red star in V5, it doesn't necessarily mean they went off of revised, or off second versus revised, because they do mention the red star in Vampire revised. So I think that would be a little presumptuous of us at the beginning because of how little we actually know, to assume that they're going to go off of the second versus revised edition. I think they're going to take a blend of what they want, and then they're just going to go from there.
I think Porter was got a little bit of an argument going on here.
No, just a clarification. I'm saying that they are going off of revised because of Anthelios. I'm saying they're not going off second edition.
Oh, okay. Then I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's why I just want to jump in and clarify that real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, they're most likely going off revised. They're just going to ignore 20th edition, go off of revised, and go from there.
Absolutely, because there's the conflict there, and again, Anthelios is a construct of third edition, therefore.
Okay, all right, Melissa, any counterpoints?
See, again, it's so hard to tell where their point that they're going to take it from. If they're going to take it from revised edition, then the Stargazers have already left, and what's the point? But they're saying specifically that there are 13 tribes, and 2 of them are leaving. So that would indicate to me that the Stargazers are still part of the deal.
Yeah, he did say in his quotes, it was all 13 tribes do exist in the world. So they're just 2 of them are no longer playable.
Right, which is again why I speculate that that they're going to retcon the Stargazers having left earlier, and make it they've left now, or somehow split a tribe to keep the numbers right. But
Okay.
you're right. The Stargazers did leave in revised. That was already a thing. You look at that core book; they're not in there. I mean, their write-up isn't in there. They're mentioned, of course.
And the other question that I have is, what about the Wendigo? I mean, they are very xenophobic.
Yes. I mean, it's possible they're pulled, but I think it's less likely because during another point that I know we've got on the docket, Achille did specifically mention being a Wendigo of, didn't he say Wendigo of South African? We didn't quote it because it wasn't
that important at the moment, but
On the same time, he also did quote that they have 2 Native American advisors, consultants on board.
Yes, indeed.
To ensure that there's no social faux pas they're going to be having by including those 2 tribes.
so yeah, and if
Why hire somebody if they're going to just cut it out?
exactly, so we know, or we
can-
don't know. We
yeah,
can
we don't
speculate
know.
that the Wendigo are probably not going to leave because of that, or
But they could be.
they could.
I mean, you still could. I don't know what these.
I still liked your idea of one of them, sacrificing themselves, going the.
Well, yeah, but we know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we know now, or it's a lot less likely now.
Yeah, I mean, it's because Melissa's right. The Stargazers did leave in revised, and again, I don't want to. I don't know this, but they're not using the Werewolf 20 canon. They can't. It conflicts with the 3rd edition, and the 5th edition is using 3rd edition's canon.
Which makes a whole lot of mess right now.
A little bit, but I mean, I think that's more of a consequence of the 20 Werewolf 20 using that. Because what are you going to do if it ends with the end of the world? How do you continue that? It's easier.
Yeah,
just
how do you
to,
backpedal?
Right. It's easier just to go, hey, well, that's a different continuity. We're still using the 2nd edition timeline. It's just current day.
I mean, he did also mention it is somewhat post-apocalyptic, and he went out of his way to say not Mad Max style, but
right. I guess I'm not next.
and again, we're in the counterpoints here, so if you guys have anything not going against, but any other counterpoints, please bring them up.
Well, I think they're going to go predominantly with the revised edition. I can agree to that. I think they might cherry pick certain aspects of the lore and default to 2nd based on just ease of continuity thing. But they're definitively going to ignore how it was extrapolated into Werewolf 20. They're just going to act like Werewolf 20 doesn't exist, and then they're just going to go from there.
Melissa?
I really hope they don't mess with my get. Like, really don't mess with my Geta Fenris, because I think they're one of the more interesting tribes. So, yeah, I'll be really, really annoyed.
Well, I hope the same, but I speculate. I think that's the way it's going to go. Now, that's it. But back, to the continuity issue, and the idea that the apocalypse has happened, that becomes a problem for me because we know we have Vampire 5 to look at. We know that world is still turning, and it's the same world. So the apocalypse didn't happen. I mean, I know they're saying they did, but that's not what the word apocalypse means. It doesn't mean a fight and everything's fine. But the implications we've been given is the apocalypse did happen and we lost. And I mean, that came from what is the back of the comic book, predominantly.
Okay.
But there's that implication, with the insert of the malady, the sickness in Gaia, as a result of the battle. So if the apocalypse happened and we lost, the world's fine, relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking.
Right. I think it's kind of a mess. I think we're going to see a lot of retcons. Just like a lot of retcons.
Well, I guess that would be the next talking point here. In the interest of making things more inclusive, we're getting rid of the idea of the metis, for example. Another Justin Achille quote. Like it's 2021 right now, we're publishing Werewolf very soon, and one of the things I didn't want Werewolf to focus on was the circumstances of your birth or the purity of your breed. Or that if you were born this certain way that somehow makes you lesser. Then goes on again to say, we're striking from the litany the idea that Garu shall not mate with Garu. Those are direct quotes. Again, we're striking from the litany. I think that's kind of important to remember here. Grant, tell me your thoughts.
So that's multi-layered. So one, I can agree, especially from a business perspective, with them wanting to eliminate that particular aspect of lore. It puts them in an awkward spot because they're basically saying within their game that the circumstances of your birth can have a huge social impact, and in a negative connotation. So, like you were saying, in the interest of inclusiveness, I could see them removing that. Even if you look at the Savage Age, we've removed the whole deformity aspect of the metas, mainly because we just don't like it. We don't think it makes much sense, and I don't think it necessarily adds to the game in such a way that, as a storyteller, I can't already incorporate. Like, I can give my players flaws regardless if I need them to play a certain way. I don't need a system mechanic to force a certain style of playing on me. As we've talked before, you all know I'm very big in storyteller autonomy when it comes to that type of thing. I don't like the mechanics to force me to storytell a certain way, which is why I'm not a big proponent of the V5. And the deformities of metas within the current editions does sort of do that. So I tend to wave them off anyway, unless I really want it for whatever reason for the story. So that I could get behind. The issue, though, is they're taking apart the whole canon and all that when it comes to metas and all the impact that it's had on the different stories overall, especially the social, ramifications of the Guru Nation. Even if they hand-waved away all the deformities, they should have still left a particular breed in the game so that you could incorporate that social stigma and that social conflict in your games. Now I have to create a whole new method of creating that same conflict that was already in the system then. And then furthermore, the whole aspect of pure breed. He doesn't directly say that they're going to excise pure breed from the game, but they're definitely going to. Which is something else that, when we were doing Savage Age, we wanted to look at it from a different perspective. And that one, I think, is unfortunately a victim of terminology. They could change the name to something else, like, spiritual purity or whatever, and I think they could still use it in the same type of concept. But I hope they're not going to remove those concepts whole cloth from the game, because removing stuff that's that integral to the game so far is going to have a huge impact on the ambiance and the feeling of the game going forward. And it's going to prevent us from doing things that we could do before.
Okay, solid. Melissa, your thoughts on removing metas?
I wonder if they're actually going to remove the metas entirely. And I mean, I'm just throwing this out because that leaves us now down to 2 playable characters. So, I mean, I agree with Grant in the sense that, there's a certain negative stigmata attached to playing a metis, that there's certain, the born of sin and all that stuff. But I'm wondering if what they're doing is actually spinning it so that, we're in our end times now, we're fighting to our very last breath. Who cares? Just get them out there, get them fighting, get them doing whatever they need to do, whether they're front line, whether they're back line, whatever they're doing. Get those guru out there, because it's certainly not a new concept. The Black Spirals use metis. The Farah have metis breeds, and they don't have that stigma attached to it. So I'm just wondering if maybe they're not actually removing metis, they're just removing that feeling about metis away.
I mean, it's certainly possible. But again, I am using direct quotes on what he said specifically. And now, that being said, I know Porter has something going.
I was about to throw you out the window for taking my point away.
That's why I only said what I said. I know
we talked about it earlier. I'm like, oh my god, if you fucking steal this from me. No, this point is the reason I wanted to make sure we got a direct quote. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't say, and if I may see the sheet for a second, Danny, because I don't want to misquote the man, we are getting rid of the idea of the metis, for example. Not the Guru Nation is changing their views on the metis. Not, we're striking the litany, from the litany, the idea that Guru should not mate with Guru. Not the nation is changing their thoughts and opinions on it. The way he worded this specifically, I mean, what it tells me is they're retconning that breed away. We're getting rid of the idea. It's not a decision through the nation. It's not something that evolved through with the times of the meta plot. We, behind the scenes, are throwing this idea out. And that's really fucking troubling to me. And I know there's multi-parts to this question. I'm going to try to get everything. I don't think this has anything to do with inclusion. I know that's what he says, but the reason the menace are deformed is because it's spiritual incest. So the message here is that incest is okay? Or is the message that handicapped people don't belong in the game, so we're getting rid of them because they're deformed and no good anymore? And now, of course, neither one of these are what the intent is, but it sends an odd message, I think. You know, you look at the menace, and this is a breed of Garu who are closest to the nation. They grow up in the nation. Yes, they have hardships. You know, they were born from a forbidden union, which, by the way, removes stories of like star-crossed or forbidden lovers in terms of your own games. Because now that's no longer a big deal. I would posit that they're probably going to have a situation where if two Garu mate, the child, if there is one at all, will be the breed of the mother, whatever form she's in when she gives birth, is probably how they'll take care of it. But again, now that takes a whole third choice away. And, you know, I hear, you know, Grant talk about, you know, autonomy in the storyteller, and I totally agree with that. The thing is I'm not worried about us. You know, if this is as it's
worded,
as it's pointed, if this is the case, they're just getting hurt. I'm not worried about us. I'm not worried about Melissa. I'm not worried about Grant. I'm not worried about me, because we've been playing this game long enough that we could look at that and decide that, yeah, that's stupid and I'm not doing it. What I'm worried about is the new storytellers, the guys who discover Werewolf with W5 and never know about all the choices that they used to have that were removed.
Just taken away from them.
Yeah, the choice has been just stripped from them, whether to accept a thing or not. In terms of the rationale, you know, in terms of Liddy, they easily could have said, like Melissa pointed out, like, things are that bad. You know, we have the idea of this, quote, apocalypse happening. Well, you could have easily had the elders of the nation go, Jesus, this is real. We should cheese it on this first tenant thing. But he doesn't say that Garu have decided to. He say, we decided to. And, you know, I think that kind of removing shit from the game, I think it's wrong, because you're removing that choice from future storytellers. You let them decide what they want to keep and pick. I mean, that's always been the way it's been. That's the golden rule. Always has been.
All right, Grant. Any counterpoints you want to hit on that from either what Melissa said or Porter said?
So I'll really address Porter's first, because his was the most impactful. No offense, Melissa.
Burn.
So we did say that they're doing away with the idea of menace. Now, they could do that any number of ways, including retconning menace completely out of the line, or saying that it's, you know, something else that it is now. So I think that, you know, they're going to try to find a way to either just not include information about meta's canonical lore, or they're just going, like you said, just retcon it completely. I don't think they really anticipate there being a backlash among those people in the community that play that have handicaps. So I encourage people that do happen to have those to really reach out to Paradox if you feel some kind of way. By all means, let them know that you feel some kind of way that makes you feel like it's having the opposite impact of what they're intending. Because I don't think they're intending to do that. I don't think that's what they're trying to do.
No one ever intends on being disrespectful.
Exactly. Well, and again, I don't think it's really their intent to either, but you could certainly look at it that way.
Right. You can. You absolutely can. And what was the last thing you said, Porter? I'm sorry.
Oh, I said a lot of shit, my friend.
No, like the very last part.
Oh, well, I think
the last point.
You know, Mike was stressing that by removing these choices from the game, it's not hurting us as old timers, but it is damaging the future of the franchise, because you have people who come in who are just have those choices stripped of them. They don't get to make a decision anymore. We get to make that call, but the new people don't. And that's kind of bullshit.
If V5 is any milestone when it comes to that, they don't give a shit. V5 did that. They annihilated so many aspects of the lore, so many aspects of canon that had already been established all the way back in V1 to just do whatever they want, basically. W5 is going to follow suit. They're going to extrapolate the details that they want to push through to make the game into the type of game that they want. I know, like, they took V5 and they're saying that it's going to go back towards, you know, the V1 focus of it being street level, you know, face-to-face type of interactions in horror. And they sort of have done that. But they did that at the cost of basically excising the second and third edition from the game. All the ambiance and lore that was built up for them is killed. You know, they made so many different things not canon anymore, and other things canon that it feels like a different game, and it basically is a different game. And I fully expect them to do the same thing with W5. If it doesn't fit in with their perspective of how they want the game to be, they're just going to cut it out, and they're not going to give a shit. And they're not going to care that the older storytellers saying, hey, we want it this way, and they're not going to care that the new storytellers don't realize that they no longer have those options. And that's just how it is.
Some strong opinions. Melissa, you got any?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I know you made the quote, it's like, the idea of the metis.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that actually mean? What does the idea of the metis mean? And for me, the continuing theory or the continuing thread that's come through all the editions is that metis are horrible, they are disfigured, they are sinful, they are all these negative things. And some tribes, like for instance the Fianna, look at them rather badly, even though they may be one of the most prevalent tribes that have a lot of metis. So my question would be, okay, is it the idea, are you taking out metis entirely, or are you taking out that idea that they are sinful and horrible and are of no use? And I disagree. I'm sorry, with the two gentlemen. I disagree strongly. I don't think they're going to retcon the metis out entirely. I think what they're going to do is they're going to level them up. So level them to the same level as a Hamid-born guru or a Lupus-born guru, and they'll not be seen as the same stigma that they have been seen in previous editions. They're taking out that idea, just like they're taking out that first litany, is that it's a-okay for you to have sex with another guru. Because at the end of the day, they still need warriors, and metis are warriors just like everyone else.
And I don't agree with the last part of your statement. But again, I look at the wording of the quote. If he had said, the nation has, or we have decided to put a different spin on, or remove the stigma, but he didn't say any of that. And Danny, if you will, again, just the bold, the relevant part.
In the interest of making things more inclusive, we're getting rid of the idea of the metis, for example.
We're getting rid of the idea of the metis. That's a behind the scenes. That's a where. That's the we he's talking about. And that's where, that's why we have this idea of it will be a retcon. It's because of the choice of words he used. And we might be wrong, but that's why I got the quotes. Because if I misquoted him, to say that, Justin Achilles said that the metis are going to be gone. Well, that's a paraphrasation, but that's not what he said.
Right, that's not the quote. So, and
right.
I get that's your point here. The words he used are what we're going on here.
It's all we got. That and our speculation, which is what we're doing here at all. So, hey.
True. Now, I get where Melissa's coming from, and I kind of don't blame her. I kind of see it that way too, but again, those aren't the words he used.
And that's the troubling part. Now, that said, if they were just to get rid of the deformity and the sterility, I think I would have a problem with that too, because at that point, aren't the metis severely overpowered? They have the benefit of growing up in the nation, so they have the most understanding of how the spirits work, rights. They know their gifts better. They've had more time for training and combat, and now they've been treated well and as equals their whole life. Why the fuck do you need a Hamid or Lupus? It also cuts ties with the kinfolk. It makes them less important.
I was going to bring that one up. That's what I was waiting on. See if anyone else said it first. That's exactly what was on my head. You have absolutely no reason to have kinfolk in the game anymore.
I mean,
you have very little reason.
It's less of a reliance.
Right.
Case in point, Melissa, who, if those of you who are newer to the show don't know, Melissa runs a game in our Discord.
I do.
You have characters, and I know you play in a game in the Discord too. I know in that game, for certain, most, if not all of the players in that game have kinfolk mates, don't they?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
That would kind of cut into that, I think. I mean, not in the existing game, but in future games, right?
I'm not so sure. kinfolk can move very easily through society or human society a lot better than, say, an Arun Getafenris with rage like 5 or 6. So you're still going to need the concept of a kinfolk. Now, if you are playing a werewolf game, are you really playing a kinfolk? It's not taking away. But if you're playing a tabletop game or an online game or you're running a game and it's werewolf, are you really playing a kinfolk? No, not likely. You're playing a guru.
Well, that's not up to you and I. I mean, it cuts out examples, but that said, I never said there was no place for kinfolk. I said it diminished their use.
Yeah, I said it, and I said it wrong. I said I meant to say there was a lot less reason for them there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. There's definitely still a place for kinfolk, just...
So here's my counterpoint to that.
Go nuts.
So what's the difference between a kinfolk and just an ally at that point?
Immunity to delirium.
Immunity to delirium, cool.
Higher
You
chance
can
to
actually,
pass on.
develop that in a random person. It just takes time. So, I mean, outside of very few things, like there's if you make it so that the kinfolk no longer have an impact on the continuance of the Guru Nation, then an integral part of why they're in existence is gone. Case in point, you say if you have a kinfolk that's kinfolk to both the Bastet and the Guru, that's a whole story there. Like, who gets that kinfolk? Who gets to interact with that kinfolk? Which society does it belong to? You cut out the fact that they no longer matter, then that story's gone. It doesn't matter who it belongs to. That's just another ally. Then that's a smaller story. I can get another ally somewhere else.
Solid.
I mean, there's a point there. I was just making the point that they're not useless. But
Yeah,
it does
again, I
diminish
said it, and I said it wrong. So it's definitely my mistake saying that.
But yeah, I think a menace would be crazy overpowered at that point. They have all the advantages, like practically none of the disadvantages.
I always liked that idea that they get the advantage of growing up in the nation, but then you have the other side of that coin. The disadvantage is they are looked down upon.
Right, and I mean that they have a hard life, but that going into it, and that's a decision you make, and that can be compelling. That can make for some compelling storytelling, and character development. But again, you're making that choice, and we're talking about that choice being taken from you.
Now it's right. So again, speculation. So it is possible. We don't know for sure.
No, we don't know for sure.
But what we do know is what he said.
Yep.
And they are getting rid of the idea of the menace. That's what we know.
And it seems like we're harping on it a bit, but I think it's a big ticket item because like Melissa, like you pointed out, that's a third of your breed options. That's a third of your choices when you're making a character. That's a significant fucking chunk.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people really do like playing a menace because they like playing the underdog, and I think it's unfortunate that this is even a concept that they're considering. That's why I think it's important to try to unpack what he means by the idea of the menace, because we're taking it at face value, or at least Porter and Grant are taking it at face value. It's like, they may possibly retcon it out. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe that's a script that he has to say. He can't give too much away, so maybe in the choice of words that he used, he can't say everything, or else, people will either not purchase the material, or they may purchase the material. Like it's a script that he has to follow. What he can reveal and what he can't.
Oh, I'm sure that's absolutely part of it.
I think I think to an extent I'd agree. Watching that interview, he certainly wasn't reading from a script. He was
but he also had an idea of what he can and can't say.
Certainly, adhering to talking points, certainly. And no, I agree. Like you said, we can only unpack what he said, and I think we're focusing on different things in that sentence. But that's all we can do is go by what those specific words mean. And I know the 5th edition of the World of Darkness plays fast and loose with what words mean, but it's tenuous grasp on the English language there. Difficulty doesn't mean difficulty anymore. It's fine. It's fine.
That's a different show.
It's a different show.
Different time. Yep.
That's an hour-long rant that I'm going to do later. Anyway,
All right.
So I think Melissa, yeah, I was sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll quick it up. Melissa, I think we're looking at different sections of that sentence to unpack, and it's just I'm looking at what he said versus what he maybe meant. You could be right. I hope you are right, but the way he chose to phrase that makes me think they're just going to pull him from the game entirely. I wish he said it. If he didn't mean it that way, I wish he'd said it differently.
Or at least maybe come out with a little bit more clarification.
Something.
Understandable. I see both points there.
Yeah.
I absolutely can see it being retconned. I'm not happy with that.
Absolutely not.
But at the same time, I can see where Melissa's going with it, where she's saying it's just the weird wording he used. This is what we're going to do with it. But again, not what he said.
Right. It's all we have to go on.
So, all right. Unless anyone else has any counterpoints, I got the next little line to go for you guys.
Oh, that's good.
All right, we're done on the metas. Got it. The other one, they were talking about the Umbra. The Umbra is now a very scary place. It almost even rejects werewolf from it. What could he possibly mean by this?
It sounds to me like he's taking the concept of the Umbra, the Hysil, from Werewolf Forsaken. And they're blending those concepts directly into Werewolf the Apocalypse in the W5. That's what it sounds like to me. And the whole aspect that, you as the guru, you fucked up somewhere along the way. So the entirety of the spirit world now is kind of antagonistic towards you. So you better, watch your step. Sort of like when we were speaking in the Bunyip episode where Guru, if they go in the Umbra down in Australia, the Australian spirits look at them like, what the fuck are you doing here? And they're antagonistic towards them. Sometimes attack them for no reason besides that they're there. The way I took Justin's comments in his interview was that they were going to do something similar. They're basically going to make the Umbra in W5 like the Hysil from Werewolf the Forsaken, which is unfortunate.
Okay. Melissa?
I don't like that. Again, I don't want Forsaken 2.0. Yeah, I just think that the whole concept, for someone who plays a lot of theurges, I find this just, no, come on. Like, this irritates me the most. And if this is what they're directing things towards, it's going to be the case of when I picked up Forsaken for the first time. I'll read it, cover to cover, then I'll put it back on the shelf and never touch it again.
Woman's got a strong opinion on Forsaken. I'm willing to bet Porter does too.
I've described Forsaken a certain way in the past.
Yes, you have.
And that's not super relevant here.
It's still funny, but yep.
But
go ahead. Yep.
If our pal TC were here, he would absolutely echo Grant's sentiment, and I know this, that this is a Forsaken concept that's being brought to Werewolf. And I'm invoking TC here because I don't know anything about Forsaken, but I know he knows a lot about Forsaken.
Right.
So, and I agree with that that's what they're doing, and I hate it. And now I'm going to turn to Melissa because we seem to butt heads on that last subject a bit. And I gotta say, I'm completely with you on this one. Not only is this, I think this is a terrible idea, but I think it doesn't make any sense. Or it opens up larger questions. Because the relationship between the Garrow and the spirits, the pact, did we stop maintaining that? Did we turn our backs on the spirits? Did we stop doing rites to fulfill our end of the bargain? What does this say about totems and spirit broods? Yeah, are you telling me that Falcon just got up and fucked off and led the Silver Fangs on their own? And if they did, then are they still the Silver Fangs if they don't have a totem to guide them? I mean, these are questions that, of course, weren't going to get answered in a 10-minute interview. But these are things that you better have a solution for before you put this concept into the game. What's wrong with you? Or, again, we're looking at more retcons.
Right, and if that's the case, what's the purpose of the Thurge then?
Thank you, Danny. Melissa, you talk about not wanting Forsaken 2.0. I'm concerned that is what we're going to get. I've said before that a tabletop game, is two things. I think most games are two things. Mm-hmm. It's systems or rules and it's lore. Those are the things you need. Without systems and lore, there's no game. We know they changed the systems, and they're now changing the lore.
So now you're making it a different game.
This is a different game. I already said no to Forsaken. I don't know why they're doing this.
A lot of people said no.
Yeah,
to Forsaken.
just about a lot of people said no to Forsaken. That's why we're not hearing about Forsaken 5th edition.
It's a weird sentence.
You know, where's Forsaken 20th anniversary edition? Where is it?
Yep, right there.
That's what I got.
Grant, counter something.
There's not much to counter when it comes to that concept of making the Umbra hostile to the Guru Nation. All I can say about that is they had better have some hot shit writers that are actually fucking writing it so that it makes sense and that it's not just a slap in the face. That's definitively not going to be one of those things they can just hand wave and everybody's going to get behind. You know, they lost a lot of customers of, you know, Vampire whenever they did the retcons in V5. You know, and I know some people say that, oh well, you know, they got enough new customers back to overcome the loss, and no, they really didn't. You know, you don't see Vampire being played in the tabletop hobby stores like you used to. Used to, you could go into any hobby store and you could see White Wolf stuff being played. You don't see that now. Now, is that part of the tabletop RPG crash? Absolutely. However, right now, we're in a tabletop boom. You see people playing D&D 5th edition all over. You have every game store worth its salt has at least one day a week devoted towards D&D 5. You know, amongst, you know, wargaming, you know, like Warhammer, as well as Magic and stuff like that. But every game store worth its salt has one D&D day. Back in the day, it used to be one D&D and or World of Darkness day. And it still hasn't gotten to that point again. And if they're trying to get back to that point to make it more relevant so they can make more money and branch off into other media, which Paradox is much more comfortable with, they need to do this edition right. And the only way they're going to do that is if they get the writers with the talent and the capability to write it so that it makes sense and make all these changes they want to make into the lore make sense to preserve the ambiance that they created with the first 3 editions. And I think the whole issue of changing the Ember so that it's hostile, I think it's a misstep. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they fix it so that it's great and awesome. But proof's in the pudding, you know. Forsaken, when it first came out, everybody bought the core book because it was like, oh, this is new Werewolf, this is awesome. And they read it cover to cover, like Melissa said. They've been on a shelf, they haven't touched it since. Even with 2nd edition coming out, they've changed so much between 1st and 2nd edition of the New World of Darkness lines that few fans that they did get in the 1st edition now don't want to play 2nd edition, and vice versa. That entire side of the World of Darkness has had nothing but issues in keeping and retaining or creating new fans for it. It just has. And if they cherry pick some of the concepts that they thought was cool, or thought was good, and bring it into the old World of Darkness, I'm all for it, as long as it makes sense and they have the writers to do it well.
How about you, Melissa?
One of the things I find the most interesting about the current edition of Werewolf is that you can interact with the spirits. But the way he's talking, and again, this is unpacking what he said, it's that it's basically a relationship that you have with the spirits. And you're basically begging for them to help you in your combat by them giving you the gift. It's not something you possess. It's like they will help you by giving you this gift to use at that time. It just annoyed me, and I had to listen to it a couple of times just to make sure I was getting it right, and I'm not even sure I got it right. And the problem that I have with it is, how is this going to work with out of tribal stuff? So as Porter said, you know, if you have Falcon and his brood and all of those gifts that are associated with that, if you're outside of that brood, are you going to be able to get access to these gifts at all? Or is the cost just going to be way too high that you can't even contemplate it? So I just think it's I think it's stupid. I think it's really, really stupid. Like, I have such a deep dislike of Forsaken that I can't even look at it, and it's on my shelf, and I can't even look at it sometimes. But it's just funny. I was going to go to Gen Con this year. I go just about every year, but this year I was going to go, but of course, because of the pandemic, the borders were closed, so I couldn't get across the border. But I did happen to see the games that were being offered. Vampire 20, Vampire 20, Vampire 20, Vampire 20. One in about 12 games was Vampire 5th edition. They were all Vampire 20. And I think that says something to the failure of Vampire 5th edition. And I think it's saying something about if they don't fix this, as Grant pointed out, it's going to be the failure of Werewolf 5th edition too.
Now, Melissa, though. Melissa, we were told that they have more new fans than old fans.
Well,
that's so bizarre, isn't it?
Then you don't have fans who are storytellers, and that's what you need.
Well, you know, it's almost like they got that number through Twitter follows and not actual sales.
I'm just going to sit here and sip my tea.
I had an argument, not really an argument, I had a discussion in the main World of Darkness chat in Discord about the relative financial failure of the new World of Darkness when it first came out. And every counterpoint that was given to me, because obviously none of us have access to their books, we don't have their accounting, we can't see what their financial overhead was, their infrastructure, how much money they spent on printing or anything like that. Right. So we're only going to look at it from the fan base. And when Forsaken first came out, and Requiem and Geist and all these other New World of Darkness lines, they were a failure. They simply were. The fans didn't get behind them. They didn't really, like you said, there wasn't many people playing those games. Now, over time, they've improved. The supplements that they've done for those a lot of those are fantastic. The virtue of how they just let their authors just kind of run with different concepts, it's fantastic. Sebastian Freeman, he's wrote 2 books for Vampire the Requiem, and I recommend them to anyone. Ancient Bloodlines and Ancient Mysteries. They're great, and I love to extrapolate some of those concepts that he wrote about into Vampire the Masquerade. But I will never run a Requiem game, ever. I have no interest in running a Requiem game. Same thing with V5. The fact that it feels so much like Requiem is the main reason why I will never play V5. I will pull concepts from V5. There's things that I like war sheets and coterie merits. I think those ideas are fucking awesome. But I'm never going to run a pure V5 game with rules as written. That's just not my style. That's not what I want to do. Even if I did a game that was focused on individual street level horror, I would do it with V20 rules. Specifically V20 Dark Ages rules, but that's just my preference.
Well, that's certainly a lot of vampire. I think it comes back down to it. To go back with what you said, if we already said no to the new World of Darkness, so I'm not sure, why coating it in a shell
over the years.
I'm sorry.
They've gained a lot of fans. The new World of Darkness has gained a lot of fans over the past 15 to 20 years.
Well, that's great. But you and I and Melissa, we already said no to this line, which is why it failed to begin with. So wrapping it in a thin shell, the corpse of Werewolf the Apocalypse doesn't make it better. To stay on the topic, and I guess maybe to close it out to move to the next one, Danny?
We're good on time.
With the spirit issue, I also wonder if, because, Garu are part spirit, so are they going to have to take anti-rejection meds so that their spirit half doesn't attack them too? Is that the plan?
How long have you been holding on to that?
10 minutes.
That's fair.
Melissa and Grant had to talk. I didn't want to interrupt them with my dumb joke.
And I appreciate it. I'm sure they do too. We do have structure here.
We're trying. It's the best we've ever done.
Yes, this is crazy.
I love it. This is great. I love structure.
Oh, God, whenever you're going to do it again.
But that was a good joke, I have to say.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, that's what we know because of direct quotes from Justin Achille himself. So, now I'm curious, what do we know about the combat system? Grant?
I don't think they covered it.
They did, actually. Well, they covered certain aspects of it. So he did quote say that he's going to be, they're going to look into a way of incorporating renown in a more pertinent manner into the system at hand, into the mechanics actually. So instead of it just being like a pseudo experience type thing that has an impact on your rank, it's actually going to supposedly have a day-to-day impact on everything you do, which unfortunately is another Forsaken concept. where they take, in Forsaken, you get renown dice, and those renown dice have an impact on every roll that you have. You have your attribute, your ability, plus renown, basically, for all of your rolls. I'm on the fence when it comes to this particular aspect of the mechanics. I think it's one of those things that be extremely easy to homebrew away and just ignore if you don't like it. And at the same time, it's going to depend on how they write it and how much that mechanic forces you to do things in a certain way. If it's just an extra dice for your rolls, and if that's the only impact that it has, cool, I don't give a shit. I'm all for letting the people that are ranked 4 and 5 have more dice to roll, because my players probably never going to get there. But if it's something that forces me as a storyteller to change my story because, all of a sudden you have 2 glory die, and that means that you have to do it in this particular manner versus that particular manner, then I'm going to have a problem with it.
Melissa?
Forsaken, blah.
Are you Dracula now?
That's a
Blah.
book. Forsaken, blah.
Yeah, blah. You gotta go at the end?
Blah.
Honestly, you know what? I know the combat system in World of Darkness is very clunky and very broken, and you can come up with different ways to kind of get around it, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty clunky and it can take forever. But I know the Forsaken combat system, and I don't like it at all. So I would probably just say, if I was running a game, and, well, it would definitely not be a Forsaken game at all. And I wonder if they're going to use some of these, like, how they've got the Hunger Dice in Vampire 5th edition? I wonder if that's how it's going to factor in. And again, I don't know how it will impact your dice roll, but I wonder if it'll play a part that way and sort of mimic it along those lines.
So like rage dice rather than hunger dice.
Yeah, so throwing in a glory dice or that sort of thing, like throwing rage in as being a factor.
Interesting. I mean, you said Forsaken, blah, but I get it.
Yeah, seriously, blah.
What do you think,
Porter?
What do you think, Porter?
I don't care. Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to say a few weeks ago, but who knows what time.
Yeah.
Right. There was a member of our Discord who was new to Werewolf, and he was confused about combat. And he didn't want to hear about homebrews. He didn't want to hear about workarounds. He wanted to understand specifically what the book says in terms of combat and how it went. And this turned into like an epic fucking poem. There were several people trying to help out and explain this and going step by step. Melissa, you might have been there. I don't recall.
I think I tried to help, actually.
Yeah, I think you were part of it.
There was a solid chunk of people
Yeah,
on this.
yeah.
Yes.
It was an epic poem. Suddenly, it was Beowulf, and and I realized during that point that I had homebrewed the combat so hard over the years. Like, I mean, what we played, Annie, is we play, I guess, Porter Combat 2.5 or something, if you will.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah, where I've tweaked it, and this is a mistake, so we'll tweak it, and here's a mistake.
Right.
So mine is so different,
Compared.
but I didn't realize how different it was until that day. So I don't give a shit. I'm not changing my system. I worked hard to make this thing flow well.
I was going to say, if you've been doing it for this long, and there are still times where we've tweaked in mid-game. Like, all right, I need to write this note down so I know I need to change this later, or whatever the case.
Well, some of that is, it's not important, but yeah,
I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah. So
That sounds like a vault book to me.
Yeah, it's almost like you and I have talked about that before, Grant.
Once, twice.
Rage Across the Combat or whatever might be a real thing.
I would definitely buy that.
$59.99.
We got a backer! All right, you got a backer. This has nothing to do with me. You did call it Rage Across the Combat.
I don't know if I can call it that, but anyway, that's not even. But that's kind of my stance. Is they can do whatever the hell they want to the combat because, having been a storyteller for so long and made my own version of combat that works for the group and goes quickly in comparison, and that is enjoyable. I'm not changing this. So who cares what they write down?
Regardless of what they say, you're keeping your system.
Right.
Understandable. I mean, you think there'd be a possibility of using some ideas and concepts what they had?
Well, I think I'd have to read it all out, and I will read it all out because obviously I don't know everything. Maybe they do have a better idea, but I would be very surprised. And I think to change the system, for example, that you and Tom have gotten to know backwards and forwards over the course of how many years, to go forget all that shit, this is it now. It better be pretty fucking great.
I see them going the simple direction, but what does that mean?
I kind of like the idea though of using renown dice to go, I'm gonna slash you with honor.
So it's across the chest and not across the back?
I'm gonna kick you in the nuts with wisdom.
You're welcome.
Take it. Sorry.
Take my glory.
Oh, man. I mean, everyone's got some pretty strong opinions on this one. This is pretty, I don't want to say clear cut, but, I mean, anyone have any counterpoints to anything?
I think this is one of the ones that it's a wait and see thing. I think that it could go any number of ways. It could go the Hunger Dice way, which I sort of expect them to do, mainly because they can make money off dice at that point, and you really can't unless you make new dice. And so I can see them doing that, where they're like, oh yeah, this is your renown dice. This is you have one glory, one honor, one wisdom die, and they all look sort of different. And there's only like 3-4 real faces on the die, and if you get this, it becomes a critical success, or this is a critical failure, like they did with a hunger die.
And like they go in a set of 10, but like it's the 7 regular die, and then like those 3 renown die, so you have to buy those sets if you want more.
So you have to buy the extra sets?
Absolutely.
Like the old auspice die.
Mm-hmm.
I can see them doing that from a monetary perspective, from a business perspective, because it makes good business sense. If you can write it into the system that, hey, this is whatever, and you're going to need these brand new dice to play this system, then people are going to buy the new dice, right? But the key is writing it so that it makes sense, that it's good. You can't just throw that shit in there and expect people to just swallow it. World of Darkness fans aren't like D&D fans. You don't just have mindless consumption of some products like some D&D fans do. Like, I know guys personally know them that if it comes out and it says D&D 5 on it, they'll buy it sight unseen. World of Darkness fans typically aren't like that. I'm sure they're out there, but in my circles, they're not like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, if it's that way in y'all's circles. We all live in different states and different countries, so I'm sure that the gaming scene is different where you all are versus where I'm at. But, if they write it well, I can see them taking that direction, and it would make smart financial sense to require the player base to buy new dice. Or, because it's easy to do, they just, use the Forsaken system wholesale.
Grant, it's funny you say that. Before New World of Darkness, if it was something on the shelf that was World of Darkness related, sight unseen. I just picked it up, bought it, secondhand, first edition, whatever it was, I just grabbed it. I have multiple copies just because I saw it in the store for a good price, and I couldn't remember if I had it at home. It was that sort of impulse buy. Granted, I was younger then, but after New World of Darkness came out, I haven't at all. And now I stick mostly to the Storyteller's Vault. So I buy the stuff from people that I know, like yourself, who I know the material and I recognize it as good stuff that will definitely help me in my campaigns that I run.
Good stuff. Grant's got some stuff out on the Storyteller's
Yeah,
Vault?
no, do you write, Grant? That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
From time to time. Editing mostly.
I love his stuff. I keep waiting for the Werebunnies, though.
I mean, I know we've talked to Chris Gunning a few times in Savage Age, but like Grant, man.
And I saw a few things written in crayon in the Storyteller's Vault. Was that you?
That was me, definitely in the crayon. That's the medium that I prefer.
That's pretty savage, man.
Crayon and food stamps. You just gotta pick them together and paste them on the page.
No, I'm going to echo Melissa here a bit. Back in the day, before the Apocalypse book came out, by and large, if it had werewolf on it, I bought it. I mean, the exception being the tribal novels, because those just did not show up in my area. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Like-
if they're not there, I can't do anything.
Right,
about it.
like now it's too late, so I don't care anymore. But it was the thing is, once the New World of Darkness came out, that was a problem. That didn't stop our games, but I certainly didn't buy another White Wolf product again. That was the end of it. And then, of course, when 20 comes out, I've bought everything that comes from 20 because I wanted to support that. I wanted to make sure Werewolf lived again, and now this shit's going on. I don't know. Here's the thing, is we went all that time without a new Werewolf supplement. So I don't need to buy 5. If it's not good, if it doesn't meet expectation, I don't need to buy another book again. It hasn't stopped our games, and it won't.
No, we're still a Werewolf the Apocalypse podcast.
Yeah, so I can
We
stop the show.
run a Werewolf the Apocalypse game. You run it out of 20, and you're the storyteller. You run it how you want to run the game.
Yeah. If we're saking the Apocryphor. I don't know how to.
Sure, something like that.
Again, yeah. If it doesn't deliver, then who cares? We don't need it anymore.
Well, we got a couple other things, a couple, I guess, speculations, because again, that's what we knew, and still speculations because it's very little of what we know. But we also know the Garou Nation is splitting up. So, Grant, hit me with something. What do you think?
So when it comes to that makes sense. I think story-wise, it was always kind of a living on borrowed time type thing, and through force of personality, it sort of has been maintained through the years. Even in the modern, quote unquote, modern age, you have, Albrecht and you have the Margrave, which kind of kept things together from falling apart. Margrave especially, even though he doesn't get a lot of props, doesn't get a lot of love lore-wise.
Margaret for
that
life.
particular, that particular Shadow Lord keeps things together, and I think that was going to be the first thing that has to happen for the Garou Nation to fall apart. I think they have to kill off that character, because as long as that character remains, then the Garou Nation, in one form or another, will persist through his own force of personality. He's going to, force those underneath his tutelage and his leadership to maintain certain social norms that is part of the Garou Nation. Same with Fangs First, Gogo Fangs First down to the Amazon. I think they're going to have to wipe him out one way or the other. Either A, he's going to fall to the worm, or he's going to fall to the new rage mechanic. I can't remember what the term is off the top of my head.
Hoglusk.
There we go, that one. One way or the other, they're going to move him from the board. They're going to move him and the Margrave from the board, and because of that, the Garou Nation is going to fall apart. And I foresee them doing something with Albrecht, too. Maybe he goes on some vision quest somewhere for the Silver Crown and never comes back.
Insightful. Interesting. Melissa, top that.
It's a competition.
Unfortunately, that's exactly what I thought was going to happen as well. They were going to take out some key players, and as a result, with those key players sort of removed, everything was just going to crumble to dust. At the same time, I think it might be a bad idea, because the thing that I like most about Werewolf is that everything is connected. And when they take that away, it's just... it's frustrating.
Understandable. You got something, Porter?
Oh shit, yeah. First of all, I gotta disagree with Grant here. I think this is really, really stupid. Here's the thing.
I'm not saying it's not stupid, but I don't know why you disagree with them, because I understand why you would
Well,
say
I'd
it.
tell you if you...
All right, sorry. Forget to say anything.
Damn, Danny.
Start over, Porter. Sorry. Bus.
Here's the thing. Is if this apocalyptic battle allegedly happened in the Garou, resulting in the malady, and somehow not the end of the world, because people, they're still around in their buildings with their internet, whatever, right? You're telling me the Garou Nation, a scrappy group of upstarts, of hard-headed, savage, angry warriors whose job is to stop this apocalypse. You're telling me they get beat in round 1 and go, darn it, I quit. We all need to break up. Absolutely not. They dig their heels in. They get stubborn and angry, and they hate it harder. That's the Garou way, for crying out loud. It's evidenced throughout all of history of the damn game. What I could see is if the apocalypse was won, if that battle they were victorious and they beat back the apocalypse, because then you have a situation where every tribe goes, well, now what? You have the Silent Strider who goes, well, obviously, we need to go kill all the leeches. The Red Talons go, well, you're stupid. We have to deal with the humans. And then you have the Black Furies go, we have to deal with the men. And the Children of Gaia goes, we all have to hug. And the Get of Fenris go, we all have to fight. And, and Shadow Lords are going, daggers in the backs for everyone. And, and it's a fracturing of the nation because they all now have different goals and beliefs of what the future should be now that they have, quote, won. That, I think, is a valid reason for the nation to break up. But that's not what they're presenting to us. Now, that said, the idea of losing the structure of the nation, I also think, is terrible, because there is so much to be had in terms of the different tribes and their traditions and what it means to single Garutu to be those, to live up to the ideals of their tribes and then to mingle with other tribes. That's the kind of thing the Children of Gaia were talking about with this unity. And you're just throwing that away. And I mean, people love their Children of Gaia. That was their, that's just killing that dream. But it was something that would happen all by itself. You look at multi-tribal septs. What does that mean for them? Does that, perhaps those are gone, perhaps tensions. I know there was talk of all the ground the Garu supposedly lost in fighting to get back septs, and maybe that's what they mean, to put a level of tribal warfare on the forefront. But I think you really lose some of the beauty of the game when you do that. It also cuts it blows up the political game, too. Just completely fucking changes it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have a tribal politics aspect to the game anymore. And it's such a big deal to the game.
Yeah, at least if you do, it's very, very different.
Damn.
And the other question I have... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did Killy happen to mention anything about Black Spiral Dancers, about whether they persist or not?
They're still around.
So they persisted. Did he actually say that, or he just danced around the subject?
No. Yeah, dance. See what you did there. No, he said he did say they were still active. That wasn't something we grabbed a quote from, but again, it wasn't a statement that was...
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still active. I think he said they were around more than ever, but I mean, they've always been thriving as a tribe.
Right, okay.
So we are not losing the spirals.
Melissa, you had something.
My question would be so you have these sort of intertribal fighting going back and forth. You have packs that are at the gaming table, for instance. Porter likes his Shadow Lords. I like my Get of Fenris. I don't know what you like, Danny. But,
I'm offended right now.
I think you like Get of Fenris, too. But
Thank you.
You have all these people who, are sitting around the table. They want to choose their own characters. How is that going to play out? If you've got sort of like the Children of Gaia fighting with the Shadow Lords tribally, and now you're kind of trying to coordinate something, it just seems like a recipe for disaster.
I never even considered that, but that's a great point. Because again, now you have this disconnect, right, between the older packs and the newer packs. And to quote some stuff out of, or to mention something like out of our Postmortem series, you have like the Rabies and Chains or the Silent Howl, packs who have been established and been together for years, and they ain't going nowhere. No, they have those personal bonds already, but yeah, what does this say for new packs starting out in the game?
Right.
If all the tribes are at war and you can't, so what? Now, this is my werewolf game, you have to be a Fianna. You have to be a Glasswalker. Is that what the future is? And that, I'm out. No, thank you. Again, stifling creativity by removing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see them trying to institute a way to make it so that mono-tribal packs are a thing, are a prevalent thing in the game. If you remember from whenever they started 2nd edition and revised, a lot of the new lore that was coming out kind of stepped away from the perspective that they had in 1st edition, that people would play, single tribe packs. It became much more of, oh, hey, people aren't really playing single tribe packs, so we have to change certain aspects of the game to fall in line with that. Especially when it comes to the background lore, when it comes to intertribal politics and stories and things like that. Very much a 1st edition thing.
You know what I love about what you just said, Grant, is that sort of backs up my theory that the camps were initially created as alternatives to other tribes.
I was expecting you to say that.
Yeah, in a system where they expected you to play at mono tribe pack.
So that
it
was
definitely is definitive. You could see it right there.
Boom. Thank you. Boom.
so that was they're nicely done. Yeah, so that was their reasoning back then.
It's speculation.
That's how. Yeah, again, okay. Allegedly, that's how they fixed that situation. How the hell would they fix this one?
They don't.
And they're going to write it, in my opinion, they're going to try to take it back to the first edition. You know, they see the first edition as, this got us all the new fans. This got people, interested and hyped up about the game. Let's go back to the core concepts of that particular edition in any way that we possibly can. Unfortunately, in W5, just like it was with V5, a lot of the first edition stuff was garbage. It was raw. It was, and I don't mean rules as written raw, I mean unpolished raw.
It's true.
And it was really difficult to get into the game and to maintain the game in a meaningful way, where you could have chronicle upon chronicle building upon one another. It was very much a one story and done type thing. I don't know if you've ever played any first edition Werewolf, and only first edition back in the day, but they were small. They weren't long chronicles. They were just a couple sessions, 3 or 4 sessions, and then the chapter and the chronicle itself was pretty much done, because there just wasn't any, the universe wasn't rich enough and diverse enough to really facilitate a continuing story over and over again. It was like burn bright but burn fast and burn out type thing.
Something I think is interesting and maybe a little, I don't know if I'm going to use ironic or funny or what, but a lot of these changes that are being made, that we hear the justification of its current year. It's 2021, so that's why. But at the same time, we're also going back to the very earliest iterations of these games to draw from. A little odd.
Very, considering time, the game has evolved because it was so old, and we need...
Right, we have to do all these changes because...
Times are changing.
Because of how antiquated Revised is. Mm-hmm. So let's get Revised's grandfather out and use those. I'm just saying, doesn't strike anyone else as funny?
No comment.
I definitely think it's a misstep on their part. I think that they're looking at the forest in spite of the trees, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. They're focusing on aspects of the game from a way that they think is going to get them as many new customers as possible. Unfortunately, they're also not taking into account the fact that they're going to be losing a lot of customers. Like you said, I don't need another werewolf book. I don't. What they wrote back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s is more than enough for me. If I need some new aspect of lore, frankly, I write it myself. Luckily for some people that follow me on the Vault, whatever I write, I'll also sell, and you can pick it up for much cheaper than it would have been if it was an official thing. So.
Go ahead and just chill for yourself there, huh? God, where'd you get that from?
I mean, you got to be your own champion, right? Gotta support yourself.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Someone should give you a microphone. Give you like a place that you can talk about this stuff. And throw it on the internet or some shit. That's a good idea.
That's why he has 6 visits.
6.
Gotta catch up. Alright, well, I guess one last point or question. Grant, what are you expecting to see, and what do you not want to see?
So, one question, because what I'm expecting to see is pretty much in line with what I don't want to see.
That's fair.
I don't want to see more of an odd amalgamation between Forsaken and Apocalypse. I don't want them to do that, and I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to transpose a lot of those mechanics over, a lot of the ambiance over, and it's going to detract from both games, not just Apocalypse. I know Forsaken gets a bad rap. A lot of people don't like Forsaken, but it does have its customer base, and those customers like the direction that particular game goes in, and they like the ambiance and flavor that it has. By taking and pulling that into Werewolf 5, it takes something away from those customers, because they won't get another Forsaken book. Paradox going to look at it and be like, you have W5, go there. And then the flip side for us as well in Apocalypse, we don't want Forsaken, so stop bringing it over into our game. We don't want it. If we wanted it, we'd play that game. Just how it is. I see them really homogenizing a lot of things to the point where it's kind of They're going to make it as easy as possible to get into the game, but it's going to make the depth of the game much shallower. It's going to make it much more difficult for new storytellers to develop a story that's going to remain relevant and prevalent through multiple iterations and multiple years. So they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're not looking at it from the long game, and I think that's what they're going to be doing. They're focused on getting new customers, and by making the game as entry friendly as possible. Any sharp edges they're going to round off. Any difficult concepts for people to get behind, they're going to take care of those. And the grittiness that was the World of Darkness and Werewolf the Apocalypse, I think some of that's going to fall away by the wayside in the interest of new customers. That's my expectations. It's also what I don't want. But
then what would you like to see then?
Well, I'd like them to go in another direction. I'd like them to actually make it grittier. I would like them to take, and you want to do all these sweeping canonical changes, maybe take a page from the Apocalypse book and actually cause one of the tribes to fall, and the impact that it has throughout the Guru Nation. And pick a tribe that no one expects. Everyone expects, the Get falling, or, the Red Talons falling or being excised in some way. Pick one that everyone loves, like the Fianna. Kill the Fianna off. That would have major ramifications throughout the game. Leave the mechanics the hell alone. You want to update something? Update the combat system. That could use an update. I got it. I get behind that. That's the single most complaint that every player that I've ever had in the World of Darkness games is the combat system is clunky. Cool. Fix it if you want to. I do. Make some of our homebrew the actual method of the system and, go on from there. If they did that, just that one tweak, just fixing the combat and leaving everything else alone, W5 would be successful. They would have to do nothing else. But yeah, if they're going to do stuff like that with a lore, make it something that no one expects and make it impactful, so that we're all shocked by it and super interested in what comes next. You're not selling me on what comes next by taking stuff out of the game. You take metas out of the game, okay, cool. I don't really give a shit what comes next because there's a whole third of the stories that I was going with that's gone now. They're just gone. Those stories are gone. So I'm not as interested. Well, Black Spiral Dancers, just about every single major plot line involved with the Black Spiral Dancers has a menace in it and a key point in that story. A key point. So by doing away with that, all of those stories, all those super bad guys are just gone. They're just written out. So yeah, I don't think they should do that. I think they should go in another direction.
All right.
It's just me.
Okay. Melissa, what are you expecting to see? What do you not want to see? What do you want to see?
What am I expecting to see? I'm expecting Forsaken 2.0. I really am. I had an opportunity to revisit Requiem and then take a look at V5 because I was bored one day and I saw really scary similarities. So I'm expecting Werewolf 5th edition to be a Forsaken 2.0. That is what I most certainly do not want to see.
So you're in the same house as Grant. What you're expecting and what you don't want is one and the same.
It's one and the same. What I would like to see is some quality stuff coming out of these people. And so far, I'm not seeing it. I haven't seen it in a while. But then, again, maybe the reason why is because when New World of Darkness came out, I just stopped buying. I was so disillusioned and disappointed with the direction of the World of Darkness that I was just like, no, I can't, no. Nope, just put it on the shelf and I never want to look at it again. So I'm really hoping that they don't do that. What I would like to see is to see a timeline that has gone through, first edition, second revised, W20, skip over Forsaken because that was just crap, and just keep the line strong. That is what I really want to see. I want to see a strong continuing line. But right now, I have doubts that that's going to happen.
Porter.
All right. What I would like to see...
You hit that first?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I would like to see is Werewolf 5th edition. I would like to see Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition. This beautiful hardcover book. with all these new ideas written by people who love and respect Werewolf, who understand the canon and how the game works, and give us something fresh and new and intelligent and well-written and respectful. That's not going to happen, and that's not what we're being given. Again, like I said before, a game is two things. It is systems and it is lore. And when you retcon and throw all of that away and just make new shit up, this is a different game. We're not getting Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition. We're getting some weird bastardization. We're getting something brand new. And if you want to make something brand new, cool, make something brand new. But don't do that and then try to tell me that this is the continuation of a thing that you just bastardized. I think that if you ask someone to talk to you about Werewolf and they give you a list of things that they demand need to be changed, that you're not hiring the right people. You want to hire people who want to sit down for an hour or two and gush about Werewolf and what's great about it. What they think could be better, certainly. But
that shouldn't be the focal point of their conversation.
You know, what needs to go? I need to say it that way. And I'm like, well, this could be tweaked, but what needs to go? You don't want to hear that in somebody that's writing something. You know, that's not how you do that. The writer of the next Spider-Man movie didn't sit down and go, you know what I hate about Spider-Man? That's not how you get that job.
Uncle Ben, that's what they hate. Damn Uncle Ben, they always kill him every time.
Well, you know, the guy's a bit of a racist. He, and he liked the ladies a lot, if you know what I mean. Ben had to go. Oh, that's ridiculous. I love it.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I mean, that's what it is. I think just along the lines of what our dear friends here are saying. We're going to get a bastardization, this weirdo hybrid child of Apocalypse and Forsaken. And I already said no to Forsaken.
All right, so it looks like all three of you are on the same page, as in what you're expecting to see is not what you want to see.
Yeah. If I'm allergic to chocolate, or if I'm allergic to peanut butter, putting a chocolate shell over it doesn't make it better.
I love chocolate and peanut butter.
So do I, but I thought it was a decent one.
No, it's good. It's solid. I mean, that's it. We know what we want. And, I mean, obviously I haven't been in it as long as the three of you have. But, like, I still feel like this game is mine. And to change everything, it's like, it kind of hurts. And I really hope they don't change everything.
I completely understand the sentiment. I think we all feel a level of, all of us feel a level of ownership with the game because there's so much of our own creativity and our own processes put into our individual games. And yeah, to hear things or to see patterns that suggest that maybe they just don't want us anymore. After we've held the line up long enough and supported the comeback of the line and are standing here going, hey, we'll take more.
Let's make this clear, though. This is all speculation.
Yes.
We don't really know how much this is changing. But I think you just said it. It's what has been said. It's the patterns that they're showing. Really, that's all we can go on. So it's unfortunate those are all the bad things. That the bad things are what we're going on by here, but what else do we have? So what I would like to see personally, maybe some clarification before this thing comes out. Make sure this is what people really want.
You know...
I know it's not going to happen. I know for sure it's not going to happen. They're not going to make any money if they do that.
You know, Grant, Melissa, I think he just won that last round of questioning.
Oh, I've had that since... Said. Yeah, I've had that since before we hit record.
You bastard. You see him high road us at this last one?
It's not even it's not even
no,
you high
see, you just said you had it since before you hit record. So you set us up, you prick.
No, it's not that I'm setting anybody up. I'm hopeful for this. I'm No, I'm not.
No, the sentiment was there.
I want to be hopeful for this.
I'm busting your balls because you just went positive and high road at us. But
it's not that
But it's
positive.
a good...
I want to be excited for this, but you said it. The patterns that they've shown so far, and that's not helping the case. It's unfortunate.
No, but
so is Porter going to give you a hug whenever they come out, and it is exactly how me and Melissa described it?
No, it's more like I'm going to put like a $20 bill in his pocket.
You're not going to touch me. And you, Grant, include me in that too. I agreed with you guys.
Yeah, it's more like the bet was won kind of thing.
You can hand me the money.
Fine, I'll hand you a $20 bill.
You're not putting your hand in my pocket, you creep.
All right. Sorry.
I think everybody wants the best for the line.
Yeah.
We all want Werewolf the Apocalypse to continue.
Absolutely.
And to not become something that we don't recognize. We don't want a soft reboot, which is what they did with V5. You know, they can call it however they wanted to call it. They can say however they want to say it. But the reality is they took the line and they soft rebooted Vampire the Masquerade. And now it's something different. It's Vampire the Masquerade only in name. We don't want the same thing to happen to Werewolf the Apocalypse. But, you know.
And that's coming from the vampire guy. Just throwing that out there.
You know, I mean, we bitch and we're harsh because we care and we love the material, so we want the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line.
I think Werewolf the Apocalypse is probably done. Me personally, I think Werewolf the Apocalypse is done. Whatever they're going to call Werewolf 5. Maybe that's just the name. It's Werewolf 5.
We can only say.
Right. Again, we're going to make that clear again. We're going to say it as we end the show here. This is all speculation. These are all our own opinions. Nobody's being put down here. We're not shitting on any of the writing because we don't know what there is yet. I'm just going to let that one hang as you end the show here.
Okay. That is, we are out of time. Because we went really long.
A little bit.
Grant, Melissa, thanks so much for joining us with us. We couldn't have done this episode without you guys. I mean, we could have got other people, but we were so glad to have you guys here with us for this.
Yes, thank you both for coming in. Appreciate you very much.
Of course.
Anytime.
And with that in mind, thank you, Danny, for emceeing this guy.
Oh, yeah.
But on behalf of Danny and myself, we want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for your support. I want you to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep your claws sharp, your head on a swivel. Take it easy.